Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We have our 17th day of streaming in a row. Alhamdulillah. It is the 17th day of Ramadan. I believe. I don't know. I was keeping up with I was keeping up with how many Jews I was reading. But yesterday, I just did not read that much. I read a little bit. But I think even the night before, I was already far behind the night before. And now I'm like even more far behind, unfortunately. Walaikum salam, John. And so I'm like desperate. Like I think I'm still like on the 15th Jews. I gotta check, but hopefully, inshallah, I'll be able to read some more today. After Jummah. I just had a pretty busy past couple days this week. Going to different events, and then first, and then um and then I was just so tired yesterday. So I was not able to read as much as I wanted to, unfortunately. And so I think I got like halfway through like the 15th or 16th Jews or something like that. And so I'm a little bit far behind on reading. But inshallah, I'll be able to get back on track today. I do have another event, and it's kind of far, unfortunately. So I wish you all the best for the sacred work. Jazakallah khair. That's very sweet of you. I mean, yeah, man, we've been. This is Usama Sajid. Nice to meet you. Oh yeah, that's the. I just created that thumbnail. Yeah, no, we've been. I mean, listen, like this has been a team effort right here. I keep saying every single day, but we've been doing some good stuff, man. We've raised around $1,238. I say around because one of the jihad attacks from Steve was in euros, and so it might be a little like 22 cents lower. But we've also got another like $22 in pennies, alhamdulillah, and 22.30 or something like that. And so, I'm very excited to see what this can be at the end of the year. I mean, at the end of Ramadan, and I'm sure hopefully everyone I was talking to him, or Aman emailed me. I haven't emailed her back, but it sounds like they're gonna get food and potentially for Eid, so that'd be cool. And so yeah, hopefully we'll have some photos and all that and all the good stuff. And so yeah, I do have to respond to her back. Like I said, it's been a little bit of a hectic week this week. Just going to different events. I have another big one to go to tonight. That's kind of like far away. It's like a revert only event in like a couple cities, like a couple towns over. So yeah, the reading has taken a big hit, unfortunately. And so yeah, we're actually gonna watch a video about that. We're gonna watch that, but yeah, what is my initial take on what's going on with U.S. Israel war? Let's see. I mean, there's like different point of views, right? There's like the point of view of you know that it seems like there could have been a better way to handle this from the U.S. perspective if they wanted, like I'm saying, if they wanted to win, right? If they wanted to win and they wanted to starve the state of Iran, they didn't even have to bomb them. They could have just let them starve themselves, and I bet it would have been so much easier, and way less work and way less money being spent. But this seems to be like they want to like put their imprint on the world, and by like completely wiping off Iran, leaving it at like 1% capacity until like just collapses on itself essentially, and then just like leaving them to just starve and survive by their own. And is there some? I've said this in the beginning. There's always like these deeper, darker, like things at play, and that to like that to be true, because if they really cared about the people of Iran, right? If the U.S. and Israel actually cared about the people of Iran, then there would have been no need to bomb. There would have been no need to bomb that elementary school. And so this is obviously about something way deeper, way darker. Is Israel trying to push, this like their own etymology narrative? I mean, I would say definitely. That's what it seems like to me, unfortunately. It just seems like ever since Netanyahu was in office, they've just been really trying to force like, this end time scenario, right? They're trying to get the greater Israel plan, this quote unquote like heaven on earth for the Jews or the evangelist Christians, whatever that looks like. And so And then Iran, as someone mentioned, Iran was, well, even they were one of the few people that has the capability to stop that. They also have like, they're one of the few. They're I would dare say few. They're probably the only Muslim state that had the political will to stop what was going on, with Gaza. And so it's just this weird conundrum of like, obviously I align myself with more, Sunni belief, like, if I was to be like sectarian, um, and it's like I've said from the beginning, is that like this is not a good guy versus bad guy. This is like a bad guy versus bad guy, or like a bad guy versus worse guy. But like, which one? They're both kind of worse. But at the same time, like, all the Sunni states have been like, one, they've turned a blind eye to Gaza. They have allowed a lot of Western influence. And yeah, we have Steve being moronic as per usual. And and yeah, it's been it's just unfortunate seeing all these Sunni states just kind of just like line up, and they're scared because they want to continue their political, power within their own state. They want to make sure that their bank accounts don't get seized. It's just sad that the only state that would actually have the balls to stand up to them was Iran, which is also a bad state. And of course, like, they funded different, from my understanding, they funded different, like, terrorist organizations. And so yeah, it's just one of those like it's really rough, and the US is probably going to make this like a really extended war, unfortunately. Iran was behind October 7th. Yeah, but then who was behind all of that, Steve? All right, we're going to put Steve in a nice little, just, it's too early in the morning for this, so we'll have him shush for a quick second. Shush, Steve. Steve has dodo bird brain memory. He can only go back to one particular moment in time. He doesn't have expanded mind to understand that this has been going on for way longer than just 3 years ago. They've been poking the bear since like a minimum 2014, but way longer than that, as we know. And so, we're not going to hear his Zionist propaganda in the chat right now. And so, yeah, now it comes down to this, right? Like, the U.S. totally screwed it, right? Like, if you want to think about this in a Machiavellian sense, you have to wipe out, like, you really have to wipe out the entire state, right? And I'm talking about from the U.S. perspective, right? Yeah, exactly, like way before 2014, yeah. This has been going on for, Obama was talking about the Gazan situation back in 2008, 2009 when he was president. Like, and how it's been like they've been facing, not genocide, but they've been facing like really harsh conditions, right? This has been going on for way longer. So, we're not going to hear his Zionist propaganda right now. It's too like, dude, like, the stream just started, like he just joined like a few minutes in. He's already starting the Zionist propaganda. Like, get the freak out of here. like I'm not gonna hear it. I'm not gonna go back and forth with that. Yeah, I guess the only reason I think 2014 is that's when I know, like, one of my friends started helping them. But yeah, I was watching a video where Obama was talking about this in his first election term. So this has been going on for a long time. And obviously way before that too. So. Was the report about the 600? I don't know. Let's maybe we can Twitter this. So okay, I guess I've just gone over like so many different things at once and haven't really hit it home just yet. My thought is this, right? Both Israel and Iran think this is their holy war. Whether it is or whether it's not, right? Whether it is at the actual holy war, the beginning of the holy war, or not, both Israel and Iran think that this is, right? And also the evangelist Christians in America, specifically those in Congress, think that this is the holy war, right? Just to get to brass tacks, just to cut all the fluff out. That's why this is dangerous, right? This is all out, like, this is they're fighting for, you know, the beginning of the end times, right? And Iran thinks that they're the only state that can stand up to the Zionists, right? The Israel thinks that the only way for this to happen, opposing opinions are tough. Yeah, it's just when you yap, bro. When you yap about crap, like all you do is just like you just the stuff that comes out of your mouth is crap. Like that's why it's we're tired of hearing the exact same horn, right? You don't listen to what anyone says, and so that's why you're just annoying. Like you are just a fly that lands on crap. Um, but yeah, again, it's it's a holy war, right? Trump is like, you know, the military officers are telling people that this is a holy war. Why do you think you renamed it to the Department of War, right? This is to somehow potentially inspire the military to, you know, to put their lives on the line for the end of Iran and the expansion of, you know, the greater Israel plan. That's what this is all about, you know. Like we already know, Steve is one heavily, you know, supportive of that, and so yeah, that's why it's dangerous, right? And the other thing is why it's extremely dangerous, you know, particularly from the U.S. perspective, is because no one in the U.S. wants that to happen. No one in the U.S. like, there are probably the laymen that think Iran is bad overall and that they think Muslims are bad. I won't deny that for sure because they're just not informed at all. And they don't and obviously the news about, you know, the primary school being hit by bombs, like that is something that probably most Americans have not heard about, like unless you're like actually taking the time to do the research, even just like a little bit, you would find out that very quickly, but most people do not know that. And so, and then yeah, I think Professor Zhang, you know, made a really great prediction where this is another way where Trump can somehow extend his presidency to be like, you know, more in this like long term type of um like this long term president, unfortunately. So yeah, either way, you know, the U.S. is gonna shell out billions of dollars, trillions of dollars probably, if they don't do this quick enough. The only way that the U.S. can do this is if they do this quick enough, and the only way they can probably do it quick enough if they use like extremely heavy, like, you know, like artillery, like extremely heavy bombs. That's probably the only way they can do that quick enough. But that would cause a massive reaction. So it's I really hope this happens quickly, but I get the concern that maybe this might be a dragged out situation, and it's gonna be, and Iran just wants the U.S. to be the massive loser. Like if worse comes to worse, and the Iran can claim victory in a sense if they just ensure that Israel just, I mean, if the U.S. gets just, you know, just punctures the whole of the economy and just billions flood out of it, that would be a victory for them at the very least, right? And so, you know, that's the thing. Like Iran, you know, you've already hit their nuclear facilities. You know, they've already hit, you know, the Ayatollah, right? They've already hit the nuclear scientists, right? You've already hit some of the other people to replace the Ayatollah, right? Like you're putting this dog that already was starving into a corner where it has nothing to lose, right? That's like a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous enemy to have. And so, you know, was it ego where Trump, you know, personally thinks that he has some messianic complex where he's the one that's going to usher in this end times heaven for the Israeli state? I wouldn't put it past the guy. You know, he's always, I mean, you know, his entire life has always just been the center of attention, you know. And so, yeah, and maybe there's bigger stuff in the Epstein file, right? Where it's like Iran is like, hey, you do this now or you are going to get exposed and whatever. So, yeah, there's a lot, right? There's a lot to think about it. Oh, shoot, looks like my chat's a little off. But yeah, your comment got sent to, so did mine. I wasn't watching yesterday live fully. Wow, yeah, for some reason my chat's done. Oh, here it is. Yeah, I don't know why your chat got got censored. But yeah, but I wasn't watching yesterday live fully. Do you think the usage of nuclear weapons is plausible, or is it just mostly threats? It's like it's hard. I mean, could there be like a tactical nuclear situation or whatever? Um, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. It's just hard to think that would be possible, right? Um, it's just hard to think that like, okay, I guess here's my thoughts about nuclear weapons in general, right? So this is my this is my belief, right? This is my opinion. This is nothing like this is what my thoughts about the world in general, right? So everything is like things that are created are meant to be used, right? Like there hasn't really been anything in this world that hasn't been used before that was created, right? You don't just create things and then they just do nothing, right? There's always a purpose for every single thing that is created, right? You know, just like humans, right? Every human has a purpose. Allah Azzawajal has put a purpose into us. So we all have a purpose. Everything has a purpose. You know, like nuclear arms and nuclear weapons obviously have a purpose, you know, and at some point they're probably going to be used, right? If they're not today, they're not next week, but they're not, 100,000 years from now, a million years from now. You're telling me that this world is going to keep going on at, the tensions just get higher and higher and higher where nuclear weapons will never be used? Of course, right? Like, I know this is like a really dark and just scary conversation, but it's just like, I just don't see nuclear weapons never being used. Like, you're telling me it was only used once in history and then just never used again. It was used 60, 70, 80, almost 100 years ago. And it's never going to be used again. I don't buy that. Is that the way that Allah Azzawajal uses to, end this earth and then start the next life? Who knows? Every person has to die, right? Every person, that's what Allah Azzawajal tells in the Quran, that every soul that lives has to die. And so, it's, I just don't see a scenario where, it doesn't matter when. It could be next year, it could be a million years from now. Thinking that we're going to become some like type 3 planetary system where, we could take control of the sun and we start moving our galaxy to other galaxies to start using their resources and all that stuff. That's giving us way too much credit, right? That's giving humans way too much credit. We're way more angry with one another, right? I mean, we can't even have peace in our chat. We have Steve coming in every other day, trying to say some Zionist propaganda. Walaikum salam. How long is your ban? Don't worry. You'll find out. We can't even have peace in this chat. We can't even have peace during the month of Ramadan with people, right? We have someone who thinks that they're a messianic complex. There's probably gonna be someone who has an even bigger messianic complex as leadership at some point. So, but yeah, I mean, the thing is with for sure, if the reason why Israel's obviously scared to use it is because, or anyone would be scared to use it because when one bomb goes off, they all go off, right? That's just how it goes. So I don't think, if I had a personal belief into it, I don't think that's what's gonna happen with Iran. I think we have epistemology in the end times, right? We have these thoughts and beliefs of what's supposed to occur, what's supposed to happen. There's so much more stuff that it's supposed to happen, right? So I don't think there could be a tactical nuke, right? But that would just make Israel look and the U.S. look really bad and just accelerate things to really high levels, right? And so, we also have this belief in the Quran where it tells us that, Israel is going to be a super powerful nation. And I'm paraphrasing, but, maybe I can look it up and show you guys at the same time while I explain it. But, Israel is going to be a super powerful nation twice in history. and it already happened one time, right? And we have some belief that that first time could have been when the Solomon was king. Ayah about Israel being a powerful nation twice in history. English only. Okay. So yeah, here we go. So this is from Isra 4:7, and we convey to the children of Israel in the scripture that you will surely cause chaos and corruption on the earth twice. You'll surely reach a great height. So when the first of the two promises came, we sent against you our servants of ours, those of great military might. So this is probably, it ended up being the like King Nebuchadnezzar, and not the Alamex, but it was King Nebuchadnezzar though, and they probed even into the home that his promise fulfilled, right? And if you read the Old Testament, they took everything, right? That was kind of the main thing. They took everything. Then we gave back to you victory over them, which happened, and reinforced you with wealth and sons, and made you more numerous in manpower. And that's when the Romans came in. If you do good and do good for yourselves, and if you do evil, you do it to yourselves. Then when the final promise came, we sent your enemies to sadden your faces to enter. Again, this is when the Romans came to enter the temple into Jerusalem, and they entered it in the first time and destroyed it, and they taken what they had taken over with total destruction. So if you subscribe from 5 accounts, that's 5 cents. And so yeah, we've already donated. We're at 12.38, and we're at $22 of pennies donated. So yeah, this is kind of what this is like. We trust in the Quran, don't we? We trust in the Quran, so we know that all of this it had happened. You read the Old Testament. This is exactly what happened, and then we have to believe that this will happen. Cause corruption on earth twice, and you'll surely reach a great height, right? So this hasn't happened fully just yet. This one part right here, right? Israel hasn't reached the highest, part of its tyrannical state just yet. It's getting there. Trust me, it's getting there. So that's why it's like, if we were to think about the Quran, I have the unfortunate belief that Iran is probably going to be toast. Right? Like, this might be one of the times where even though we saw the Professor Zhang thing, and it might make the USA weak, right? It might make the USA not the global superpower anymore, and it might raise up China's status as well at the same time, just because US is getting lower. But Israel will also become a pretty significant force specifically within the Middle East, for sure, without a doubt. And then yeah, I have looked into the story, but not too Yajuj and Majuj. Yeah, I've looked into it, not too much. Wouldn't give you nothing for Gaza yet. Need nothing. Okay, then you don't have to give. Yeah, how much have you done, bruv? We got a hater in the chat. That's funny. And so, yeah. But yeah, so this is what we have. This is what we believe, right? Did Iran deserve this? I mean, I don't. I mean, did the people of I would say, did the people of Iran deserve this? Probably not. Yeah. I mean, they unfortunately they like, from what we understand, they did fund different terrorist activity, particularly with October 7th, like, so that is what we believe, right? And so, but like, it's one of those things, like the chicken or the egg, like which one came first. And Israel has been poking Gaza for the longest time, for forever. Literally, started taking, parts of their territory. And then, yeah, it's, So yeah, it's hard to understand. I would probably I'm not smart enough to answer that question. Like, did they deserve this? I don't think anyone deserves like what the heck's going on. I think there's a way easier way to this life, right? I think you know I have personal beliefs about Israel, right? I think if Jewish people want to live in Israel, that's great. I think having a government is I think having any I was talking about yesterday. I think having any type of government in the Holy Land really goes against the whole idea of trusting in God ultimately, and even in particular, right? Especially for the Jews, if we want to go back to the Old Testament again, you know, during the time of prophet, who was it? Was it no? It wasn't Saul. Prophet, the one who anointed king to be Saul to be king. Who was that? Prophet who? Who anointed David to be king? Prophet Samuel. Yeah. So again, this is some biblical history here, but according to the Old Testament, once they wanted the Jews, they wanted to have a king. They've denied the favor of God, and so the Jews have always wanted. The point why I'm referencing the Old Testament to this is because the Jews have always wanted a self-representing leadership, right? Instead of trusting in God, and so God has always cursed them. But God gave them this ability. It's like, all right, fine, you want a king? We'll give you a king. We'll give you King David. We'll give you King Solomon. But then after that, there was the end of the 12 tribes of Israel, splitting into two major tribes, and then obviously with like King Nebuchadnezzar, and his military taking everything. I mean, every difference counts, right? God is one official. Every small, everything counts, man. I mean, we've raised, a significant amount of money. We've we're gonna be donating another $22 on top of that, so we'll see. Inshallah, we still have the last 10 days. We're doing our best to make a small difference in this world, right? With all the darkness that's happening, this community in particular, we're doing something that we're a small grassroots community, and we're doing everything we can. Subhanallah, right? And that was you're making a really great point, real Fox, right? There was Iran was also did horrific things to Syria, right? Horrific things to Syria. So it's like, did they deserve it? I mean, it's hard to scale. Like, what is the geopolitical scale? Like, deserving, did the primary school children deserve to be bombed? Of course not, right? Like, that's without saying, right? Did the Ayatollah deserve to be martyred? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, he wanted to be martyred, so he's probably actually, he had cancer. He's 86 years old. Like, if you're gonna go out, like, do you want to suffer for the next few years, or do you want to just, hey, quick over 86 years, good time, good life, good family? So but now the question is, do the people of Iran deserve this? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think anyone deserves it. I think personally, Israel, they don't play by the rules when it comes to a lot of this stuff. Right, they never play by the rules. They always take really, really dark, cheap shots all the time. And, they're using this October 7th as this propaganda parade to say that we have to do this in order to defend our security for the rest of forever. But it's kind of like if someone yeah, I mean, I don't want to use examples, but there's people who've talked about certain examples about some of this stuff. They're pretty dark, so I don't want to explain it on stream right now. But yeah, it's and so yeah, it's just so then I put myself obviously into my shoes, right, as an American, as someone who obviously understands the nuances between Shia and Sunnism, which most Americans will not understand that type of stuff. So it's like, then what do we do, right? Because I for sure am not going to be going to the Middle East to go fight in anyone's defense. Not there's no way I would fight for the cause of Zionism at all. And so then it's like, well, what can we do? And the best thing we can do is just inform people for now. Um, I know it's not a whole lot, but inform people, pray, help those who are suffering, show show God that we want, like that's how I see it. Like I have no power today, right? I have no political power, no economic power, no cultural influence at this current moment in my life right now, Friday the 6th of March, right? But what I can do is that show God that I want to do something good, right? I want to help this world out in some way, shape, or form. So by doing this fundraiser, by making content about Islam and trying to explain the truth between Sunnism, Shiism, and expose what's truly going on in the Middle East to the best of my ability, I might make mistakes, right? Build a community up where we can be charged to, just do something positive, right? So that's how I see it. It's like showing our creator, showing Allah azzawajal that I want, like, whatever the grand plan is, whatever, he knows best. He knows everything that's happened before the war, during the war, after the war. He knows it all. He knows every single situation. He knows what everyone's thinking about at the exact same moment, and it's easy for him to do all of this before. And so yeah, we are so we're sitting here, and it's like I want to be at least at bare minimum, I would love to be just one single brick or one single line on a paper of what the grand plan is to help push for a world that has justice and peace, right? That's how I see it, right? And that's what we understand about our end times, right? Is that there will be a time of justice and peace. There will be economic flourishing for people. But unfortunately, there has to be a lot of negative consequences that happen, right? We do know that. Any epistemology says this, right? That's not unique to Islam. That's Judaism. That's Christianity. That's Islam, right? But it's to show God that, hey, I want to try. I'm not gonna just sit here on my butt and just pretend it doesn't exist and just work some corporate job and then party on the weekends or whatever. That's not what I'm gonna do, right? That's taking the easy way out, right? The easy way out is living a comfortable life now, right? The hard way out is when you get to live a comfortable life in the hereafter, right? I think about Prophet Musa a lot, right? He's, we all, obviously, we treat all the prophets the same, alhamdulillah. But I think every once in people have certain affinities to specific prophets, right? There's this one person I was talking to, and he is a born Muslim, and he was he has a lot of affinity for Prophet Ibrahim, right? May Allah be pleased with him. Specifically, because he's for reverts like myself and God is one official, we had to go search out we had to go search for God, right? We had to go find out what God really meant to us. And, that's what Ibrahim did, right? He went to go look at the sun. He went to go look at the moon. He went to go look at the stars, right? He was trying to find out who God was to him. And so whether you're a revert or born Muslim, a Christian, a Jew, Steve, or whatever, you have to go search out for who God is to yourself, right? And that's what Prophet Ibrahim did. And there's so many different stories, right? Yeah, Prophet Yunus as well. Yeah, kind of just, just being in the belly of the whale, right? You feel like everything's dark. You think, it's a lost cause, but anything can happen. For me, it's Prophet Musa. It was interesting because when I started reading the Quran the second time, I was also finishing reading the book of Exodus for again, for a second time, and it was perfect timing. It was perfect timing because when you read the Quran and you really start to absorb information, you see that obviously Musa is the most talked about prophet by far, for many particular reasons, right? The first thing is, Prophet Musa. Oh, yo, I'm pulling a Kamala Harris. Isn't even plugged in. That's so funny. It's not plugged in. But for Prophet Musa, he obviously he ran away from home, from his Egyptian home, because he killed a man, right, by accident. And so it's when you the thing is, at the same time though, is that he ran, like, he could have easily just went to the king. He could have easily just went to the king, to the pharaoh, and said, like, yo, I made a mistake, I'm your son, whatever, or you're like my uncle, or whatever, like, like, can you please just, like, pardon me, whatever, let's get back to boozing, let's get back to partying, let's get back to the good stuff, right? But no, he ran away, right? He left the luxuries, right, of this world. He left being part of the Egyptian, kingdom, right? He left being part of the Egyptian royalty to go live out in the desert. Right? And so, he went to go live in the desert. He was, like, herding animal, like, like sheep, or, he was like a shepherd, right? That's where he met his wife. And he wasn't there just for a couple of years. He was there for a very long time. He was there for an extremely long time. And so, but then he went back, right? He went back with nothing. He went back with only just because of the will, the mercy, and the guidance from Allah azzawajal. And he stood up to the most tyrannical government of all time, right? This person thought he was king. He thought he could build a tower that could go reach God, all of this stuff. And he's someone who didn't want to be a prophet, right? He didn't want to be the spokesman for God. He wanted his brother Aaron to do it. He was nervous. He was anxious. He didn't want to do it, but God specifically chose Moses, a person who was fearful. He was, scared because he already killed someone. He didn't think it was good enough. So he had a really dark history. He gave up everything. He had anxiety. He couldn't speak well, but God still chose him to do amazing things, right? Glorious things. And so, he's someone I find a lot of inspiration in, because it's like, if Allah Azzawajal can choose someone who had such a dark past, and someone who was anxious and didn't even want to do it, to do all these great things, why wouldn't he choose you? Right? Why do you think you're off the board? Obviously, none of us are prophets, but, like, anyone could be used for the will of Allah Azzawajal. Specifically Prophet Moses, specifically Prophet Musa. And that's why, his story is something that, we need to really think about, especially when standing up to tyrannical governments. So what can we do? Sometimes you have to retreat. The only way you can really reform yourself as an individual sometimes is by retreating, right? Another story, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he retreated all the time. He retreated to the cave to go reflect and meditate and think about God, right? He wasn't doing his reflection and reforming as an individual when he was a businessman. He was doing it while he was in the cave, right? He was doing it while he was meditating in the cave. And then same thing when he went to Medina, right? There was no possible way where Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was going to be able to conquer Mecca if he stayed in Mecca. He had to go retreat, right? He had to take that time to really, form what Islam was spiritually, politically, all of these other, institutions of Islam, and then also spread the message, form, the companions, the Sahaba, until they can then go take, Mecca, subhanAllah. And so, for those who might be having these periods of, like, dry spells, meaning, like, things aren't working out, like, career-wise, things are not, like, are just, like, a little slow in your life. Welcome to the club. You know what I mean? Like, every prophet had to go through all of this. Prophet Yusuf, he was in a prison for according to the Bible, for 2 years. For the Quran, it could be even more than that, right? Could be even more than that. He was in prison. And so, but then he ended up being, pretty much the financial minister of all of Egypt, the most powerful empire at the time. And so, we sit here and we're like, wow, nothing's happening in my life. Nothing's going well. I feel like I'm not achieving anything. Well, it's like, are you reflecting enough? Are you praying enough? Are you asking Allah Azzawajal to use you to do good in this life? Do you want to do good in this life? That's what you need to think about, right? Because then, inshallah, will be part of the grander plan. If you really want good to happen, if you really care about all of these peace, justice, all of these things, sometimes you got to reflect. Sometimes you got to take a break. Sometimes you have to, focus on your deen. But action will come only if Allah Azzawajal thinks your heart's ready for it, right? And so, there's all of these reasons why these stories are particularly there in the Quran, in the Bible, but particularly in the Quran as well, right? He didn't choose every single prophet that was talked about in the Bible. He chose specific prophets to talk about. And so it's like, how can we integrate them into our lives? And so, yeah, I think about all this stuff constantly, right? It's like, okay, what can I do? What can I do? And then what can I do next? But yeah, what's your question? You have a question that you don't know Arabic, and I have complete Quran's translation thrice. So in this Ramadan, I should read transliteration or translation. Please help me out if anyone knows. You should learn Arabic. That's what you should do. You should get a teacher. If you want a teacher, I have a teacher. But you should get a teacher and learn Arabic. Because then, and the reason why you should learn Arabic is because I'm telling you this now. We talked about this on stream the other day, but Allah Azzawajal, he could have picked anyone, right? He could have picked anyone from China to be the final prophet. He could have picked anyone from South America, Mexico, America, whatever, right? It didn't have to be the year 600, the 7th century with Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, right? But there's a specific reason why he chose Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and he also chose, Mecca, and he chose Arabic, right? So I personally believe that, there's so much knowledge internally that we might not even understand as people, specifically me as a revert, that Arabic has these different metaphysical properties, specifically the words in the Quran that can help potentially even heal you, right? Even though you can't understand the words when you're reading it, well, some words you'll see like Musa, you'll see like Alhamdulillah, you'll see like you'll see some words that you'll recognize, Rasulullah, you'll see that, but just the tongue flick, moving it out, hearing the pronouncing the sounds and hearing them, maybe it's like coding us in some particular way. So I really implore you that don't read the transliteration. Read the transliteration if you're trying to memorize certain surahs. I know people might say that's haram, but yeah, it's easy. It's easy for sure. It'll take you like a month and a half to start reading the Quran. From going from like zero knowledge to reading the Quran, it'll take you like a month and a half. If you put in like the work, like 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, you'll get there. Inshallah. May Allah Azzawajal make it easy for you. But yeah, the transliteration, you should just open the Quran and read it if you can. So okay, that was a massive soapbox. Jeez, we've been streaming for 40 minutes and we haven't even done anything. Oh my god. I'm 19, trying to get a job. Unfortunately, this is the reason why I'm not able to focus completely on Quran. So, you're in India. I have a teacher. She it's remote. If you really want to learn Quran, and that's and she's always looking for new students. It's remote. And so, she can do it literally whenever you can. I do mine in the morning for me, like 7 a.m. or something. I haven't been doing it during Ramadan because I've been super busy. But when I finish, I'm going to go back to practice more with her. Because I also told her that I was going to read the entire Quran in Arabic this year for Ramadan. So I was like, what's the point? And I'm already going to be reading it. So then, like, at least when I'm done reading it, we can start practicing, like, on my pronunciation, my tajweed, and all that stuff. But yeah, if you're really serious, then yeah, join my Discord, and I'm happy to get you connected. And she can help you out. But yeah, so wow, okay. We were already gonna do a shorter stream anyways, and I spent literally the first 45 minutes just going off, based. So yeah, we'll probably have time to watch half of this, to be honest. Maybe even a little less, unfortunately. Unless anyone has any more questions, maybe we can just go over some questions. But we'll have to end the stream in like, no, let's see, 11:30. It's 11 o'clock. We can go until, yeah, I could probably watch all of this. Investigating. I kind of want to go into this.
Weeks of a nuclear weapon for as long as I can remember.
But at what point does especially China get more involved in the action?
If that were to happen, we're on the threshold of intercontinental nuclear exchanges. The reason we're in this war is because...
Okay, wow. Hold on. This is going to get spicy. Let me take this off.
Israel and its Zionist billionaire supporters in the United States currently control Congress and the president.
How does the United States benefit from this conflict in any manner?
It doesn't.
Folks, as I talk to you right now, World War III might be around the corner. Things are on 30 area. I think it's the world out, I think, but funds from that. And a genuine company out of the cost wall is at 1%
right in this conflict in the first place, from the Trump administration's point of view, and then if it differs from your point of view as well.
Well, listen, people can go and listen to Hegseth and Trump and whatever they have to say. I'm not going to repeat that drivel. I'm going to tell you...
Also that, like, wait, hold up. What's that guy's name? Hegseth? Where is it? Yo, so this is the Department of War's tattoo on his arm. You're like, dude, this is the guy who's in charge of the Department of War? Like, what do you guys think is actually going on, huh? Like, what do you guys think is up? This is the United States Department of War. It's tattoo. Or do people know what this means? Oh, you saw that? Okay, good. Okay. I was going to say, so if for those who can't read this says kafir, right? This means hardcore. Yeah, he's literally branding himself as a non-believer. This literally shows that, you know, this is what they believe, right? They believe that this is gonna be the beginning of the Holy War for them, right? This is what they think. Like if you have people that are going into this thinking that this is the Holy War, then it's just bad. It's just down bad. Like down bad for many different reasons.
That the reason we're in this war is because Israel and its Zionist billionaire supporters in the United States.
Dude, also that guy is super goofy. Anyways, I'll digress.
Currently control Congress and the president. They invested enough money to ensure that everyone on the Hill will support whatever Israel wants. And they invested enough money in Trump that he was able to be elected in 2024. Those are the facts. So we are effectively in this war to remove Iran as an obstacle to Israel's regional hegemony.
Now, if you say that to a congressperson or to someone that's an AIPAC, they're going to say that is a conspiracy theory.
Well, it's not a theory. It's a fact. All you have to do is look at the 100+ million that have been invested in the Congress by the Zionist billionaires. Because if you just look at what AIPAC says it spends on lobbying, that's about $3 million, which is a modest sum.
There's no way it's $3 million. They spent $250 million on Trump alone. Hold on. I want to show you guys this as well. AIPAC commercial. Was this it? Oh yeah, this is it. This you're talking about Goofy.
Let's talk about it.
So this is from the APAC YouTube channel, right? This is from the APAC YouTube channel, the American Israeli Super PAC, right?
APAC.
Today, APAC.
On Capitol Hill, APAC.
APAC.
You may have heard our name, but how much do you really know about APAC? APAC is an American organization that works to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship. This partnership advances America's interests and democratic values and helps keep Israel safe. Our 6 million members are U.S. citizens, Democrats, Republicans, and independents from every part of the country who urge our elected leaders to enact pro-Israel policies. This includes expanding America's defense partnership with Israel, supporting life-saving
Just let's listen to this one more time.
are U.S. citizens, Democrats, Republicans, and independents from every part of the country who urge our elected leaders to enact pro-Israel policies. This includes expanding America's defense partnership with Israel, supporting life-saving security assistance, confronting Iran and its terror proxies, and promoting peace and normalization. Being pro-Israel is good policy, and APAC members make sure it's good politics, too. We raise money to help elect pro-Israel candidates for Congress.
So they make sure that they elect pro-Israel candidates, not pro-American candidates, pro-Israel candidates.
From both parties. And we take the political fight to our opponents, helping defeat anti-Israel candidates running for the House or Senate. APAC is leading the fight in Washington to secure the future of the U.S.-Israel relationship. The actions of pro-Israel Americans today will help determine the future of this bond and the fate of both countries.
I mean, they're not even hiding it anymore, right? Like, they're not even hiding. Like, it's actually absurd. The amount of, that they're just out in the free air, right? The goal of APAC is to make sure that they get pro-Israel candidates, all right? That is their only legislation and policy, to then push it down our throats. And so we are literally, our political will is the will of Israel, right? We don't even have a political will in this country anymore.
You have to look at the direct payments that go into political action committees to ensure the candidates are elected. You have to understand that a candidate who says they're not prepared to support whatever Israel wants knows that whoever his opponent is will then be offered the same money regardless of party, as long as he or she supports whatever Israel wants. It's a very simple process. It's worked brilliantly because they've had almost inexhaustible funds to invest. Now, all the nonsense about Israel is the first, or not Israel, but Iran is the leading state sponsor of terrorism, that's all nonsense. If you're looking for an Islamist state that sponsors terrorism, that advocates for the use of force against anyone who is not a Muslim for all intents and purposes, but certainly against Israel, against the United States and Europe, go to Pakistan. Pakistan is a world-renowned incubator of Islamist terrorists. Their madrasas, religious schools, are heavily funded by the Saudis that push this Wahhabist extremist Islam. And they very definitely fall into the category. Of course, Pakistan has nuclear weapons, which suggests that if you want to avoid being disrupted or invaded or attacked by the United States.
Yeah, this guy's making a good point. Like, Iran doesn't even have nuclear weapons, but if they actually cared about Islamic terrorism, and if Pakistan's the #1 producer of that, like, why would... yeah, okay, this is actually... I'm super interested.
In Israel, you probably ought to invest in nuclear weapons.
Which is what they're accusing.
Iran has made it very clear that they will not build a nuclear weapon. That was declared an impossibility almost 20 years ago by the man who is now dead, the former supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. We decided on the basis of Israeli propaganda and direction to say that we don't believe them and they're lying. You've got to go back and look at Mr. Netanyahu's record as a good example over many, many decades. Iran has been within 2 weeks of a nuclear weapon for as long as I can remember. Iran is a terrorist and wants to kill everyone who is not a Muslim. It's all nonsense. We forget that, for instance, this man, Soleimani.
It's probably just because they're Persian. Going back to that video we watched about, what was that, the Purim?
Who was the leader of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps back in 2005 and 2006, was instrumental in taking the Shiite population led by the famous mullah, whose name escapes me at this point, out of the fight so that Petraeus could pay off the Sunnis and the Shiites would stop fighting to allow for some measure of stability to put in a government. And that government turned out to be pro-Iranian under Mr. Maliki. People have forgotten that. Then Mr. Soleimani came back into the country to organize the Iraqi Shiite militias to fight against ISIS, whom we declare to be our enemy, and Al-Qaeda, and Al-Nusra, and all these Sunni Islamist organizations. They were allied with us. And Soleimani actually went into Syria with these Shiite militias and liberated Christian and Druze and other towns occupied by Armenians and Georgians and so forth. We murdered him. That was our gratitude for his good work.
We murdered him.
Because Israel wanted him dead, because he was opposing everything Israel wanted to achieve. What I'm trying to tell you is that we've just got lie after lie after lie after lie spewing out of people's mouths. And, you know, I keep telling people, and they listen in Europe, they listen in the Middle East, and they certainly listen in India. If you want to stop Islamist terrorism, the first place you look is Pakistan, not Iran. And I am not advocating war with Pakistan. I'm just trying to expose the fiction that people are repeating ad nauseum.
So as it stands right now, it appears 3 different U.S. military bases have been taken out. The Burj Khalifa has gotten hit by a drone or a missile. We've bombed a school in Iran where school children are dead. Apparently, Trump has sunk up to 9 Iranian naval ships. What do you make of the carnage so far, and where do you predict it's going to go?
Well, actually, the Iranians have destroyed 27 bases in the region.
27 now.
27. They actually attacked our air base in Kirlik, Turkey, which has been a key hub for U.S. air power across the entire region for decades. And that is no longer usable. We also need to remember that when we say destroy, it doesn't take much to damage an airstrip or airstrips. In other words, to render many of these bases inoperable is not difficult. Now, the 5th Fleet's base has been utterly and completely destroyed, seriously pulverized by multiple missiles. In many other cases, they've used relatively cheap, inexpensive drones that our air defenses have failed to shoot down. And when I say ours, I'm talking about the air defenses we established in UAE and other Gulf states using Patriot missiles and so forth. Of course, Patriot missile, if you fire it at 2 or 3 drones, is a pretty bad exchange rate because you're spending millions of dollars to shoot down a couple of $100,000 worth of equipment. But they've managed to also damage all the port facilities that we have historically used, even port facilities in Oman. And we were building a port facility in Oman that was supposed to replace the one we've been using in Dubai. And the reason for that was very understandable. We were looking at the vulnerability of the port facilities, and we needed someplace else where we could reload Tomahawk missiles and strike missiles from the Navy, the whole SM family. Right now, we've lost all of those. And the impact on our logistical infrastructure is huge because you're talking about having to fall all the way back to ports in India or ports in
I do agree that there will be one probably.
Europe because you can't.
Because that's the only way that's going to drag U.S. boots on the ground would be a false flag attack. Because no one wants to go. No one wants to go and fight a war, boots on the ground in Iran. Especially Iran. You know, like I said before, they're like, you know, a starved dog in the corner, right? They have nothing to lose.
Use the ports that are in the Middle East. And then beyond those that have been destroyed or damaged, most of the countries in the Middle East have now turned away from us. And I think that's going to be the future. If I were going to predict the future right now, I think we will be swept completely out of the Middle East by the time this war ends. We will be finished in the region.
Do you predict this being a short-term conflict or something that is going to be long-term and ongoing?
I think this is going to go on for weeks, maybe months. We just don't know. Remember when we started the Kosovo conflict, the bombing campaign, that was supposed to last, as I recollect, 2 to 3 days, maybe a week, 2 weeks at most. Well, it lasted for 78 days. And the bombing campaign did not drive the Serbs out of Kosovo. We sent Strobe Talbot to Moscow, and he cut a deal, as President Trump would say, with the leadership in Moscow that agreed that they would tell the Serbs that they could not provide them with food, fuel, and medicine through the winter. And at that point, Milosevic, who was then the widely demonized leader of Yugoslavia or Serbia, recognized that he had to get the troops out because he didn't want to watch several 100,000 of his countrymen starve or freeze to death in the winter, because we bombed all the energy grids, all the heating plants, and so forth. This time around, you're in a somewhat different position because you have an enemy that is far better armed with much more modern technology than anything we faced in Serbia in 1999. And thus far, the Iranians seem to be doing very, very well. I think their next step is to essentially eliminate all the air and ground facilities in Israel for the Israeli armed forces, and force the Israelis to essentially fight from the ground without having much access to launch aircraft.
Do you think Israel is going to get absolutely pounded over the next few days?
I think it has been already, and it's going to continue nonstop. I'm told that President Trump actually sent a message over the weekend to the Iranians offering them an opportunity to negotiate. And they said not only no, but hell no. And I think they've had it with us, because once again, this latest attack did not begin with us.
I mean, yeah, if they had a deal potentially, and Iran was already looking to concede many things, and then they stormed out of it, Jared Kushner and the other guy, there's no more deals left to be talked about at this point. Like, the time for deals are totally off the table from the Iranian perspective.
And we need to back up a little bit. I've been saying for months, ever since the 12-day war ended, that this would recommence. In other words, the war between Israel and Iran and us would recommence. I thought it would happen just before Christmas. It didn't. Then it became clear that it was probably going to happen in January. We saw these demonstrations, which were grossly inflated in their importance. We lied about what had happened over there, arguing that tens of thousands have been killed, which is a lot of nonsense, including, large numbers of police. Well, ultimately what happened is...
Yeah, I mean, that's just complete, propaganda. I mean, meaning, like, they're just trying to get people riled up about this. They're trying to get Americans to be, like, gung-ho about this potential war, because everything's on fire in this country. The economy's on fire, right? Like our economy is really bad right now. We're bleeding out billions of dollars by the day when it comes to this Iranian war, and so it's like, yeah, I think D2 said it perfectly. Like, there probably will have to be a false flag attack in order to get people to actually rile up, because if this is a couple-day conflict, like a couple days more, then, and again, this is from the U.S. perspective, then, like, people have a really quick memory, right? They'll forget about it. They're like, all right, yeah, that is what it is. We'll move on. But if this is, like, as he's saying, like a couple weeks, couple months, oh, man, people are going to get very angry and very angst.
Is that they did kill the demonstrators, about 400 policemen, but we know that happened because the Mossad was on the ground with weapons and passed them out and urged people to shoot them, paid people to shoot them in some cases. And the demonstrations were not about overthrowing the government. They were protests about the sad state of the economy, largely as a consequence of our...
Yeah, I mean, we are just totally burnt out on all of these conflicts. Like, people are already burnt out on Trump already because he hasn't delivered any of his promises. and they're already burnt out on the Middle Eastern conflicts as well.
Sanctions. And the government didn't disagree with them and said, we're doing everything we can. And they were negotiating a deal or a loan with China for $1 billion to boost the economy. As it turned out, all the killing made that impossible. But only about 3,000 people were killed. Some were jailed. But what we told was a lie at the time about what was going on. But I think the lie was actually believed in the White House. And I think President Trump actually thought, well, this is the moment we should be prepared to attack. But it was shut down so dramatically, particularly after the Iranians discovered, thanks to Chinese and Russian intelligence, where the 40,000 Starlight terminals were that the Mossad had smuggled into the country for use by their agents and the opposition. Once those were shut down and they eliminated most of the agents or the ringleaders, then it all ended. Right now, the only demonstrations we've seen since that time, and including yesterday, involve millions of people demonstrating support for the government. So I think it should be pretty clear now that what President Trump expected at the time wasn't real. Now, we heard from Mr. Witkoff quite recently that he, in private with Mr. Trump, concluded that it was very strange to them that the Iranians had not capitulated simply on the basis of assembling all of the American military power. And he said, why? We thought they were going to submit. You begin to wonder who the hell is really in charge. And I think we know who that is. That's Netanyahu. And Witkoff and friends are all surrogates for Netanyahu. Mm-hmm. Utterly false assumption about how the Iranians think or how they would behave. Iran will not submit to Israeli Jewish supremacy over the region. They won't do it. They won't submit to it over them. And I think they are now increasingly going to be backed by most of the region. And we are desperate. I think Trump called this inaccurately. I'm not sure what kind of advice he got. I doubt seriously he listened to anybody that told him about the limitations on our missiles, how many we had, how many we could produce to replace the ones we shot, and so forth. And I think he also failed to listen to people that told him what we could do from the sea and what we can't do from the sea. The outcome is now a war that is just dragging on without any end in sight.
Can you go on a little bit more about the miscalculations you suspect this Trump White House has made in this conflict? And how that could result?
I'm told that we have something in the neighborhood of 4,000 to 5,000 missiles in the region right now. Many of those are Tomahawk, some are Standard missiles. Against that, you have 250,000 missiles on the Iranian side. There are many different categories, and the numbers are different in each, but the point is they have vastly more missiles than we do.
Wow.
And remember, they're a continental power. That means they're a land power. Their logistical supply chain is very short. Their manufacturing facilities are all underground, and they're continuing to turn out missiles. They also had the Chinese deliver many hundreds of missiles over the last few weeks. And these missiles are very accurate, very lethal. They're compatible with the launchers that the Iranians have. So I think there was a tendency to brush that aside. I think they thought that the Iranian air and missile defenses would fail completely. Well, actually speaking, they're starting to perform finally better than they have in the past. And I think that that's enough to deter people from entering Iranian airspace. The one area where I'm told that we have actually crossed into Iran, along with the Israelis, is up near Tabriz in the very northwest corner of the country. So the point is, I think we've misjudged. We've misjudged our production capacity, our ability to keep up. We keep forgetting that for every missile that's incoming, you fire 2 or 3 to try and knock it down. We have not kept up with the technological developments that they have achieved in Iran. One of their newer missiles that's had great success deploys a dozen or so decoys. And while the various anti-missile missiles are being fired in Israel or by us, the real missiles that are the real dangerous ones that you want to try and stop penetrate. In other words, they have gamed this very effectively, and their penetrations have been effective. And they've used cheap, inexpensive drones wherever possible and they've managed to essentially shut down the economy in the United Arab Emirates, shut down Bahrain, shut down Kuwait, shut down Qatar. These are not minor matters, because India does billions and billions and billions of dollars of business through Dubai, through the UAE. 18% of the economy in the United Arab Emirates is tied up with aviation. Right now, no one can land or take off. I mean, I could keep going down the list, and you've seen what's happened with oil. Oil is spiking. Remember, capital always flees conflict and crisis and migrates to stability. We've destroyed stability. We've destroyed confidence in the staying power of the Emirates and I think Saudi Arabia. I'm told just before I came on here that a refinery in Saudi Arabia is on fire.
Yeah, I mean,
we start destroying.
Yeah, dude, like there's gonna be a massive, like if the war was to stop now, there's already gonna be a huge economic crisis in the Middle East.
If they start destroying refineries and oil infrastructure, and I think that's what's going to happen, it's going to have a terrible impact. It's going to take years to recover from this. And the Iranians have no incentive, none whatsoever.
Exactly, that's what I've been saying.
To believe anything we say.
I mean,
we've lied to them.
They have no incentive to not back down either.
Repeatedly, and the way this war started, actually, according to Secretary of State Rubio, he spoke to the so-called Group of Eight yesterday. He apparently said, well, you know, the Israelis got this started, and we decided we'd go ahead and join in. In other words, this was not a carefully coordinated, orchestrated beginning. And what were they able to do? They were able to kill the supreme leader. Well, what happens when you fire a CEO? You get a new one. You know, we need to wake up. This is not a personality cult in Iran. This is a real modern state. They have ample succession procedures in place. One commander replaces another based on the casualties. This is not some backward sultanate in the Middle Ages that you lose the sultan and everyone falls apart. So I think all of the assumptions we made about Iran at this point are wrong. Now the real question is this: what else can we do? Well, one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to persuade the Kurds that control much of Syria and parts of northern Iraq to invade Iran on the ground. We're telling them, if you do this, we will help you build your own state. Now, guess who the source for that information is that was captured through signal intelligence? The Turks. Now, if you're a Turk, how do you feel about a Kurdish state emerging in the region that aspires to take almost a third of your country? And just a few weeks ago, we had a situation where a group of Kurds, about 400 of them, armed to the teeth, were organized and sent into action to cross the Iranian border by the Israelis, by the Mossad. The Turks informed the Iranians of this, and the Iranians annihilated the 400. So I think what you're going to see now increasingly is greater cooperation between Turkey and Iran. Turkey has the largest army in NATO. Turkey is a modern state with modern armed forces. And the Turks are already very unhappy about what the Israelis have done in Syria. The Israelis have taken much of southern Syria and continue to push towards Damascus. So I guess what I'm saying is that we are now looking around for other ways to attack Iran. Is that evidence for success with the air and missile strikes? I don't think so.
One thing that I'm very curious about is, so it seems like this is going to have very big ramifications on the world oil market. And two beneficiaries of Iran's oil market is Russia and China. At what point do the bigger superpowers join this fight? I know that China is supplying weapons and planes right now, but at what point does especially China get more involved in the action, do you think?
Well, right now, to compensate for the 2.7 million barrels of oil a day that India receives from the Persian Gulf, the Indians are buying oil from Russia. China is buying oil from Russia. Japan is buying oil from Russia. So I think we can say at this point that this is a bonanza financially for Russia. They're making more money than they've ever made from the oil and natural gas market. They have a new pipeline, straight into China. And they are doubling down to pipe as much oil and natural gas into China as possible to compensate for at least a temporary loss of oil and gas from the Persian Gulf, because China gets roughly a third of all of its oil and gas from the Persian Gulf. However, we should point out that China stored up a great deal of oil and gas. In other words, they have reserves, and they built those reserves up against the very high probability that this would be cut off by us. So I think, at least for the...
Whoo, man. Yep. There's gonna be this is the start of the multi-front war, right? This is gonna be bad news bears, right? So Russia's making a ton of money, right? Because they're sending oil to India, China, Japan, right? Especially India and China have a lot of people. They have a lot of wealth. So they're sending millions of barrels of oil a day to both of these states as well as Japan, right? And Russia's just absolutely just like, if there's like a vein, an oil vein in China's arm, Russia just put it in and it's just pumping it in, right? So that's happening. So Russia's going to be making a ton of money. Russia's going to be making a ton of money, and this is going to help fund their war in Ukraine. So that's not going to happen. So that's not going to be done yet. That's going to continue to go, right? China already has reserves. They're building this up. They also own, from what I understand, 50% of the world's supply of wheat, right? Of wheat, WHEAT. 50% of the world's supply of wheat, something like that, or it's like 25%. They own, whatever it is, they own an absurd amount of wheat in the world. Let me look this up just to make sure. China owns 50% supply of wheat. Okay, here we go. No, just why? What happened? Close tabs. No, dang it. Let me try that again. All right. China. Yes. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. So China holds, just from this one article right here, right? China holds 50% of the global supply of wheat and rice and 70% of the corn reserves. So why is this important? Walaikum salam, Jan. How's it going? You're a revert too, Jan, right? I think I've seen your YouTube channel before. SubhanAllah. So China holds 50% of the world's global supply of wheat, rice, and 70% of the corn reserves. Why is that important? Why is this important? Why is this important? This is a question to the class. Why is this one fact right here extremely important? Why is it important? Class is in session. Why is this important? What does the class have to share with the teacher? Come on, you're telling me, is the class scared? Is the class scared to answer why this is important? What the heck is this? Is the class scared? Okay, the class might be scared. Okay, the reason why this is important is because if China goes to war, right, they have the one that they're not going to have to trade with anyone, right? They're not going to have to trade with anyone to get food, and they have enough food to supply their military for who knows how long, right? You're telling me that China owns 50% of the supply of bread and rice? Let's Steve answer this. China owns 50% of the supply of bread and rice and corn. Yes, we're all blanking staring. Yeah, that's okay. SubhanAllah. But So if China needs to go to war, they have millions of barrels in reserves, right? They have they have half of the supply of wheat, of bread, right? Half of the supply of rice, and 70% of corn reserves. Corn's in everything in America. That's in all of our food is corn. Corn syrup, corn this, corn that, right? So if they go to war, they're fine. They have the money, they have the food, and they have the supply, right? They have the direct access to Taiwan. They have all of the food supply, and they have the oil supply, right? They've been building up their military under Xi Jinping for a very long time, right? They've been supercharging their military for so long. They've been staying out of geopolitical events for a very long time, and so they have everything, right? We have Steve with the classic, just wants to be counter, like he just wants to be the counter opposite position, and once again he's wrong. Once again he's desperately wrong. And so that's why this is a massive issue, right? This is a massive issue because, one, Russia's getting paid, all of these, millions of, they're getting paid so much money to pump oil into all of these countries so they can continue their war. China can build up their supply until there's just an easy walkover with Taiwan. Iran is going to be fighting like a dog till the end. And the United States is going to be funding a war with the EU in Ukraine. They're going to be funding the war that's in Iran, putting boots on the ground in Iran. And they might even have to put boots on the ground in Taiwan, or at least like air defense and naval defense in Taiwan. That's your World War III for you. That is your World War III.
At the moment, Russia and China are fine. The rest of us, not so good. Europe, in particular, is in serious trouble because we destroyed the Nord Stream pipeline, and we insisted the Europeans not take oil and natural gas from Russia.
And then, no offense if anyone's from India, but India is ran by Hindis, and Hindi people are crazy.
So they followed suit.
That one's just more of a joke, but again, that is your. I shouldn't even say that joke. But that's the main three, right? That's where the World War III, will come in, and U.S. is the benefactor to all of it.
They're not taking oil and natural gas from Russia. Now they've lost their access to oil and natural gas from the Middle East. So what do you do in Europe? Well, I guess you wait for the summer. You may not be able to do any work at night because you won't have any electricity. Look, what I'm trying to illustrate is that everything we have done has been done in a vacuum. We have ignored the interests of our friends and allies. We don't care what happens to the Turks. We don't care what happens to the Indians. We don't care what happens to the Europeans. The only thing we seem to care about is Israel.
Yes.
How does the United States benefit from this conflict in any manner?
It doesn't. That was my point. If I'm projecting into the future, I think that by the time this is over, we'll be finished in the region. Nobody's going to invite us back in to build bases. Why would you want a base that belongs to the United States inside your country? Did we protect these bases? No, we couldn't. So what's happened to the bases? They're destroyed. What's happened to other facilities on the ground in these various places across the Middle East? They're being destroyed. So I don't see much evidence that we're going to be welcome there much longer. In fact, if you're sitting in Korea right now and you're already fed up with the way we've been treating them, and you want to get us out of your country, but you're too polite to say, please leave, I think the South Koreans are going to look at the situation and decide, look, these Americans haven't been very successful at protecting anybody. They can't protect their own bases. They certainly can't protect the Israelis. So just why do we have the Americans in South Korea? Because we don't expect an attack from North Korea. And right now, South Korea's largest trading partner is China. And the Chinese don't like North Korea. Nobody likes North Korea. You don't buy anything from North Korea. North Korea doesn't build anything to sell to anybody. So what would the Chinese like to do? They would like to see South Korea ultimately take ownership of North Korea. But that's impossible as long as we are on the peninsula. But people say, well, wait a minute, the Chinese want to invade South Korea.
Yo, this is like new information unlocked.
No, they don't. Why? Why would they do that? The same thing is true with Taiwan. For God's sakes, they don't want a war over Taiwan. A war with Taiwan would destroy business, destroy the economy. There's no value in seizing
That's actually a really good point.
Control of Taiwan. They've made it very clear the only way that they end up invading Taiwan is if we put missiles and troops on Taiwan. Sound familiar? So, the world has changed. It's 80 years since the end of the Second World War. People are still running around saying, well, if the Iranians get the nuclear bomb, they'll attack us right away. No, they won't. But that's good Israeli Jewish propaganda. That's designed to buttress support for this war to destroy Iran. And remember, what's the war about? Have you looked at the Greater Israel Project? Have you seen the map? The map takes Sinai. It takes part of northern Egypt. It seizes part of Jordan. It seizes most or half of Syria as a minimum, part of Iraq, northern Saudi Arabia. This is what we're fighting for?
So it seems like this is a battle that is supposed to help Israel become a world superpower while depleting the United States, which it doesn't seem like Israel has any objective that align with helping us. It's more so they're using us as the big bully to help do what they want in the neighborhood.
Of course. And since they've got control of Congress and the White House, who's to stop them?
So I think it brings up some interesting questions of free speech. I know that a colonel...
All right. We're probably going to stop here today. I think this was a good outlook like the Ottoman Empire did. All right. I don't know what that's a reference to, but Steve, we always appreciate your 2 cents sometimes. But yes. Okay. So yeah, this is, I think this video right here really summed up everything that I was thinking about. And so, yeah, it just comes down to this. We're being pushed into, like, it's funny. So I've said this before on stream before. I said this on stream before. And, this goes back to like 1776. We have, we're back in this mode where we are fighting for the United States, are fighting with this parasitic state that says that it, just as we watched that first video before this one, just as we were watching this, that like we're fighting for the benefit of our country because that their security is our security. And so we're giving them our land, we're giving them land, we're giving them resources, we're giving them our taxation, we're giving them everything in order to ensure that they have a strong state. No, you don't worry. I only put you on for 10 minutes, Steve. Shush. Let me sign off. I only put you on for 10 minutes. Like you don't have to use your alt accounts. There's no Giazza for you. Don't worry. You didn't do anything egregious. But yeah, I really like, if you guys really want to get a little bit even more interesting, more into this, like it's a short read. It's something that I reflect on a lot, but there's this common sense PDF. So, as you can see, I've been reading it. So like this is kind of the situation that we're in. I'll give you guys a quick little overview. So like, yeah, this is kind of what made the tide, and this pan flip is what started the, like, essentially kind of what like revolutionized, the idea of the American Revolution, right? So back in like 1776, there was like a third of the population that was for American Revolution, a third of the population that were loyalists, and they wanted to stay, tied with, and they wanted to be, they thought that a great United Kingdom or a great British Empire was good for America. They were loyalist, right? that would probably be like our current government today. And then there's like a third of the population that was like in the middle. Like they didn't really know which way to go, and they didn't really care either way either. They're just like, you know what, like it's not a big deal. Maybe someone else will take care of it in the future. There's nothing we're gonna do right now. This pamphlet comes out, and it totally inspires the majority of America, especially that middle third that was kind of in the middle, to want to go to revolution, right? To want to go to war with the UK. And it basically outlines like the origin design of government, like, you know, what is the purpose of government, right? You know, like this section right here is about like, you know, the divine right to rule, right? That there's like states, and it talks a lot about Israel, funny enough, in this pamphlet. But it talks a lot about, you know, the divine, like people who have this belief that they were chosen by God to rule, right? The king and all of the kings back in Europe at the time thought that God, the idea was that God chose them to be king, and that they were morally, ethically, you know, in any type of form, they were above its subjects, right? And it talks a lot about Israel. It talks about like a lot of the Old Testament stuff I was talking about earlier about Israel. And then it goes into like, you know, different plans and yada, 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 whatever. It's pretty short, right? But this is something that I think about a lot because we are in the exact like thoughts of the current affairs of the American people. And so this is kind of where the exact situation we're in. People try to say we're like America is in. People are trying to say America is in this like civil war situation where it's like the right versus the left. That's again just Zionist propaganda. We're in this situation of, you know, a revolutionary war against Israel. We don't know that yet, and I don't think it will happen, but that's kind of what it should be, in my opinion. You know, the UK was this tiny island off, you know, thousands of miles away, fighting, you know, European conquest for the benefit of itself and for the, you know, the detriment of the colonies at the time. The exact same thing's happening today with Israel and America. And so, you know, nothing will change in this world unless the American people stand up to this parasitic state. Just like how it happened in the Revolutionary War, you know, nothing will happen unless the people of this country actually stand up to the parasitic state of 2026. And so yeah, it's something I think about a lot. I've actually kind of wrote something similar to this. Maybe one day I might release it. Who knows? But anyways, that's kind of my thoughts on all of this stuff. But until then, we're going to do our best to help people who need it. We've raised $12.38 still. Alhamdulillah. You know, we've got another $20-something and pennies, which has been great. We're going to keep live streaming every single day for the rest of Ramadan. I will end this one early today because I am going to Juma, and then I have some other events to go to. I have another event to go to later today. And so, but hopefully, inshallah, I will be streaming like Saturday and Sunday, but for like a long time. And so yeah, that's kind of my my hope. And so yeah, potentially I might release it. We'll see. I might make a video about it as well. So we'll see. And so no, it wouldn't. No, it would be like 10 pages long. Like it's super short. Like it would be like 10 pages, very short. And then, yeah, the same thing is like, how could you account for all the influence that the UK had, that the British Empire had back in 1776? Like, what time Saturday, Sunday? It's going to be the exact same time, 10 a.m. But hopefully, inshallah, I'll stream for like 4 or 5 hours each day. Like long streams. I want to do like long streams for Saturday and Sunday. So we'll see. Inshallah. We'll see. My throat was kind of hurting this morning, so hopefully, luckily we've been working the voice box, and so I think we're good. But my throat is a little sore today, unfortunately. I hope I'm not getting sick, but we'll see. But yeah. Anyways, so we're gonna end it here. But yeah, Jazakallah khair for all of you guys who joined. You know, we're gonna keep pushing this. You know, we have haters in the chat that are trying to say that, you know, the Penny series is lame. Penny series is not lame. We've raised $1,200 more than they have, right? We've already done way more than anyone else. And we're a small community. And, you know, this is just the beginning. this is the beginning of doing more, things that we can hopefully do as an internet community to help those that are suffering. But yeah, have a nice rest of your day, inshallah, or night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. And again, make sure that you're doing your best to receive the blessings and rewards from Allah Azzawajal this Ramadan, and I'll talk to you guys soon.